My husband left me for being childless, and the day he walked away, I felt as if my soul had been scraped empty, like a house suddenly stripped of its walls and windows. And I stood in the middle of that silence, wondering why love dies so quickly, when pain arrives too slowly. I had given every part of myself to hold that marriage together. And every day I whispered prayers in the cold darkness, hoping something would change, hoping my arms would not remain empty forever. But life had its own long, cruel rhythm, and every passing month became a reminder that I was alone in a place where I should have been a home. He never understood the ache that lived beneath my ribs, and he never saw the way I held on to hope, like a fragile flame sheltering it from every harsh wind. And when he finally said, "I cannot do this anymore," his voice did not tremble. And that hurt far more than his leaving, because it meant he had already left long before he spoke. I carried the weight of his absence like a shadow that followed me everywhere. And for months, I felt myself shrinking until I barely recognized the woman who stared back at me in the mirror. Her eyes dimmed, her heart bruised, her breath shallow from carrying the story of a failure she did not choose. So I left that city that held my memories, and I started again in a place where no one knew my name or my past. And I learned to breathe in a different air, one not tainted with expectations or the echo of someone telling me I was not enough. I worked, I prayed, I waited. And then one day in a hospital room, warm with the scent of new beginnings, I held two tiny lives against my chest, two miracles with fists curled gently against my skin. And I cried, a sound that came from every broken place inside me, healing at once. They were mine, my twins, my unexpected sunrise. And with them, I felt whole in a way I had never felt before. And every night, as they slept, curled against each other, I whispered to them, "You are my strength. You are the reason the world opened again." Years passed, and I built a life around their laughter, their steps, their questions, their warmth. And I never spoke ill of their father because I wanted their world to be soft and steady, not flavored with bitterness or echoes of abandonment. But fate has a way of turning quiet stories into storms. And one afternoon, as the sky thickened with clouds, I received a message from a number I had erased long ago, a simple line saying, "I need to see you." And for a moment, everything inside me stilled, like a river caught in sudden frost. I agreed, not for him, but for myself, because some chapters must be read again before they can be closed for good. And with my twins holding my hands on either side, I walked into a place I never thought I would return to. When he saw me, his breath caught, not because of me, but because of them. The two children standing beside me, reflecting a face he knew too well, their eyes carrying a color that belonged to him alone. And I watched the truth strike him like a wave breaking against stone. He asked who their father was, and I looked at him, not with anger, not with grief, but with the calm strength of someone who has survived her own ending. And I told him the truth. You left before destiny arrived, and destiny does not wait for those who run from fate. He fell to his knees not because he had lost me, but because he had lost the years he could have known them. The first laugh, the first tear, the first tiny step, the nights they cried, the mornings they smiled. And in that moment, he carried a pain I no longer wished to hold. My twins looked at me, confused, innocence shining in their eyes, and I knelt beside them, whispering softly, "Everything will be all right. You are safe, you are loved. And nothing that happened before you were born can ever dim the light you bring into this world. I stood then, holding their hands, guiding them away from the man who had once defined my worth and now stood helpless before the truth he never waited to receive. And as we walked into the fading sunlight, I felt a peace settle inside me like a long-awaited exhale. I realized that sometimes we break so that we can rebuild, not into who we were, but into who we were meant to become. And motherhood had rebuilt me with grace carved from storms and courage born from ashes. My story was no longer about being left childless. It was about returning with life, love, and strength greater than the sorrow that once consumed me. And in that journey, I found myself in ways I never expected. My twins are the chapters I will never stop reading, the miracles I will never stop thanking the universe for. And as I watch them grow, I know that every tear, every night alone, every whispered prayer was leading me here to this moment of quiet triumph. Life has a way of returning what was taken, but not in the same shape, not in the same time, and not for the same reasons. And sometimes the return is not for reconciliation, but for closure. A final look, a final breath, a final understanding that the past does not hold us unless we allow it to. I walked forward with my children, their small fingers wrapped around mine, and I felt the weight of my old sorrow fall away like leaves from a tired tree. Because I was no longer the woman abandoned in the silence. I was a mother carved by resilience and shaped by grace. And as the sun dipped behind the horizon, I whispered to myself, with a soft, steady heart, "This is my new beginning."
But stories never end exactly where we think they do. And in the weeks that followed, I noticed small changes, quiet shifts, like the world was preparing me for another turning of the page. And though I closed the chapter of my past, there were echoes that still followed me, like soft footsteps behind a closed door. My twins grew curious about the man they saw that day, and their questions came like gentle waves tugging at the shore of my heart. Not heavy, not demanding, simply searching for meaning in a world that had suddenly expanded around them. And I answered with honesty, wrapped in kindness, telling them he was someone who once loved me and someone who once dreamed of them before he even knew they existed. I watched their eyes absorb the truth with the innocence only children possess, their hearts unburdened by the weight of adult decisions, their understanding shaped not by pain, but by the trust we shared. And in those small conversations, I realized how powerful love becomes when it chooses softness over bitterness. Days passed into weeks, and one evening, as the air cooled and my home filled with the gentle hum of bedtime stories and sleepy breathing, I received a letter left quietly at my door. A letter with handwriting I recognized, even after all these years. And for a long moment, I simply stared at it, feeling old timelines stretch and fold like fabric in my hands. I opened it slowly, not with fear, but with the calm acceptance of someone who has outgrown the storms she once feared. And inside were words written with the trembling honesty. He said he had changed. He said life had shown him the emptiness of choices made in haste. He said he wished for forgiveness, not to return to my life, but to earn a place in the lives of the children who unknowingly carried his reflection. I read each line, letting the truth settle, like dust in a quiet room. And after finishing, I placed the letter on the table and sat in the soft glow of the lamp, thinking not of the past, but of the future, the one I was building with my children, step by gentle step. Forgiveness is not a door you open for someone else. It is a window you open for yourself, letting fresh air in after years of breathing the same stale regrets. And in that moment, I felt the window open inside me, letting the breeze wash through the rooms of my heart. He asks for nothing more than the chance to know them, and not as a father, not as a claim, but as a human searching for redemption. And though my heart carried memories shaped by hurt, it also carried wisdom shaped by healing. The next day, I sat my twins beside me on the couch and told them the truth, that life sometimes gives people second chances, not because they deserve them, but because we deserve peace. And they listened with wide eyes, their small hands resting on mine, offering comfort they did not even realize they were giving. And so I agreed to a meeting, one guided gently by boundaries and soft caution. And as he arrived, I watched my twins greet him not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the curiosity of two hearts unscarred by the weight of old stories. And I felt an unexpected gratitude rise inside me. They spoke with him, asked him things only children dare to ask, and he answered with humility shaped by years of regret, his voice raw, his eyes soft, as if the simple presence of these two small souls was enough to unravel the years he had spent holding himself apart from the truth. I stood at a distance watching them, and in that moment, I realized something profound. Healing does not happen in the return of the past. It happens in the way we choose to walk forward from it. And I was walking forward with grace I never knew I possessed. In the weeks that followed, he became a gentle presence, never imposing, never demanding, simply showing up with consistency and sincerity. And slowly, my twins grew to see him not as a missing piece, but as a new chapter, one that stood beside our story rather than inside it. And I learned that sometimes life brings people back, not to restart what was broken, but to show us how far we have grown without them. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting gold across the sky, my twins ran toward me, laughing, breathless, their joy echoing across the yard, and I watched him follow at a distance, his expression soft with gratitude. And in that quiet moment, I felt the universe settle something within me. I was not the woman abandoned in the ruins. I was the woman who rebuilt her life with love, resilience, and unwavering hope. And as I held my children close, I whispered to myself again, this is my new beginning. A beginning shaped not by who left, but what arrived. Love, forgiveness, and a future brighter than the sorrow that once lived in my heart.
Time moved like a slow river, carrying all of us gently forward. And day by day, I watched my twins grow into themselves, discovering pieces of the world with the innocence only childhood can hold. And in their laughter, I found a melody that repaired so many broken corners inside me. Life settled into a rhythm, soft, steady, warm, and though the past had returned in the shape of a man who once fractured my world, I realized he no longer had the power to shake the ground beneath my feet, because I had built myself on foundations made of strength and quiet courage. His presence became a small part of our weeks, a shadow that no longer frightened me, a reminder that closure sometimes arrives in the form of kindness. And one afternoon, as we sat in a quiet park, watching the twins chase butterflies, he spoke words I never expected. He told me he knew he could never undo the pain he caused, and he did not wish to rewrite the story we once shared. He only wished to honor the life that had grown from its ashes and give our children the truth of his heart without expecting anything in return. I listened with the stillness carved from years of surviving storms, and I realized that the woman I had become was no longer the woman he left behind. And that realization felt like a sunrise easing over a long, dark night. The twins called out to me, their voices bright, and I walked toward them, feeling the grass cool beneath my feet. And as I knelt beside them, they wrapped their little arms around my neck, showering me with the pure kind of love that heals without trying. Days turned into seasons, and the leaves shifted from green to gold. And one evening, as autumn settled its soft chill across our home, I sat with my twins on the floor, painting pictures of dreams they wished to chase someday. and they spoke of skies they wanted to touch and worlds they wanted to explore, and I felt their hope filling the room like warm light. In those tender moments, I often wondered how much of my strength they absorbed without realizing it, how the journey that shaped me was now shaping the path they would walk someday, and the thought brought a quiet pride to my heart. One night, after tucking them into bed, I stepped onto the balcony and looked at the sky, wide and endless. And for the first time in many years, I felt the vastness of my own becoming. I had crossed storms that once felt impossible. I had walked through endings that once seemed final. And now I stood here, whole, steady, at peace. A gentle knock sounded at my door, and when I opened it, he stood there, holding a small box, not with expectation, not with presumption, but with a quiet, trembling respect. And he handed it to me, saying, "This is not an apology. This is a thank you for letting me know them, letting me heal, letting me see the life you built from the ruins I left behind." I opened the box slowly, and inside was a simple pendant, shaped like two tiny stars intertwined, and it glimmered softly beneath the warm light, reminding me of my twins, two small lights guiding me through every darkness I had ever faced. And I felt tears rise, not of sadness, but of gratitude, for the strange, unpredictable way life fits broken pieces into new constellations. I thanked him not for the gift, but for the honesty, for the humility, for the courage it took him to confront his own past and walk toward it instead of away. And we stood there in a silence filled not with regret, but with understanding. As months passed, he found a place in the orbit of our story, not central, not forgotten, simply present. And my twins grew to know him without carrying the weight of what once happened. And I grew to see him as someone who had learned the hard way that running from pain only deepens it. But the truth is, healing does not require reunion. It requires release. And one evening, as winter approached, he told me he would soon be moving away to begin a new chapter of his own, a chapter shaped by the lessons he had gathered from the shadows of our past and the light of our present. I felt no fear, no sadness, only a quiet acceptance, because I knew that every soul must follow its own path, and his had finally found direction. And as he said goodbye to the twins, their small arms wrapped around his neck with trust untainted by old stories, he whispered to them promises made with sincerity, and I knew he would keep them. When he walked away this time, it did not feel like abandonment. It felt like closure. The gentle ending to a chapter that had once held so much pain and now held only growth. I stood in the doorway watching the sky paint itself in shades of dusk, and my twins came to stand beside me, their hands slipping into mine as naturally as breathing. And in that moment, I felt my heart overflow with a peace so deep it felt like a blessing. I looked at them, their eyes bright, their futures wide open, and I whispered softly, "This is our life now, a life built not on what we lost, but on what we found within ourselves: strength, hope, love, and a future shaped by the quiet power of survival." And as the night settled around us, like a comforting embrace, I knew with certainty that our story was still unfolding, and every page ahead was waiting with new beginnings.
If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single subscription motivates me to bring you even more exciting and dramatic HOA stories. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. I'll see you in the next story, where justice gets even more satisfying.